The crazy idea that changed warfare. Imagine standing on a beach, hearing the deafening roar of chains smashing the ground, dust and soil flying everywhere, and then realizing that the earth itself is being beaten into submission. This wasn't some science fiction story. This was real, and it happened in 1944, just before D-Day. Engineers had been struggling for years with the same terrifying problem. Millions of German mines buried in beaches and fields, ready to blow up any tank or soldier that stepped on them. Clearing them by hand meant sending brave engineers crawling forward under fire, probing the soil inch by inch, while German machine guns swept the beach. Casualties were staggering. At Le Main in 1942, sappers were dying faster than they could make lanes for the tanks to advance. Commanders were horrified. Something had to change, and fast. The British solution seemed insane at first. Instead of delicately detecting or moving mines, why not smash them into the ground until they exploded? That idea came from Captain Abraham du Toit of South Africa in 1941. He imagined a tank fitted with a spinning drum covered in heavy chains. The drum would hit the earth with tremendous force, detonating mines safely in front of the tank, while the crew stayed inside the armored hull. Du Toit patented the idea in 1942 and brought it to Britain, where engineers began transforming his vision into reality. Before this, other attempts existed. The Soviets built rollers that pushed mines down with heavy wheels. But they had problems. Mines could slip between wheels or be pushed into soft ground without detonating. Rollers only protected the tracks, leaving the tank's belly vulnerable. Other British designs, like the Scorpion and early Matilda Baron flail tanks, relied on auxiliary engines mounted outside the tank. These made the vehicles too wide, complicated logistics, and often broke down in harsh conditions. The breakthrough came when engineers realized the tank's main engine could power the flail directly. By connecting a drive shaft to the spinning drum, the tank itself became the power source. This innovation solved major problems. The tank stayed narrow, easier to transport, and didn't require extra engines that could overheat or get clogged with dust. The Sherman Mark V, known in America as the M4A4, became the perfect base. It had the Chrysler multi-bank engine, one of the strangest tank engines ever built. 30 cylinders arranged in 5 inline banks in a star pattern. This engine produced 425 horsepower and could reliably run for hundreds of hours without breaking down. That power was essential because spinning heavy chains at high speed while moving a 32-ton tank required enormous energy. The flail mechanism added roughly 2 tons to the tank's weight, but the benefit was clear. It could safely beat mines to death and clear paths where no human could survive. The first Sherman Crab prototypes carried 43 chains on a spinning drum, each ending in a fist-sized steel ball. The drum rotated at 142 revolutions per minute, hammering the ground and detonating mines buried up to 5 inches deep. A single tank could clear a path roughly 3 meters wide, enough for vehicles and infantry to follow. When deployed in groups, 3 crabs in echelon formation could create a 20-meter wide lane, wide enough for an entire armored column to advance. Even the sound of it was terrifying. Soldiers later described it as a deafening roar, dust clouds so thick they couldn't see a meter in front, and chains flying from explosions like deadly projectiles. Yet, inside the tank, the crew was safe. Armor values remained standard for Shermans, 50 to 51 millimeters on the front, angled for effectiveness, and 76 millimeters on the turret. The crew was reduced from 5 to 4 because the hull machine gun had to be removed to make space for the blast shield. But as amazing as it was, the Crab had limitations. The main gun could not fire while the flail was spinning. Crews depended entirely on supporting tanks and infantry during mine clearing. The flail moved at walking speed, between 1 and 2 miles per hour. Too fast, and the chains wouldn't strike the ground densely enough, leaving mines intact. Yet despite these limits, the Crab was a solution no one else had. It gave engineers and commanders the ability to clear heavily mined beaches without losing hundreds of men in the process. This machine looked insane in tests, but the reality was that it would prove invaluable on D-Day. Allied forces landing on Normandy beaches faced minefields, obstacles, and machine gun fire. Without specialized tanks, these beaches would have been slaughterhouses. The Sherman Crab was about to show the world that brute force, clever engineering, and sheer audacity could overcome what seemed impossible. The British 79th Armoured Division, under the command of Major General Percy Hobart, deployed specialized vehicles known collectively as Hobart's Funnies. Among them, the Sherman Crab was a star. Crews trained extensively before D-Day, practicing in mock minefields, learning to maintain the chains, drive at walking pace while clearing obstacles, and navigate under blinding dust. By March 1944, the British had ordered nearly 700 crabs, with production expected to reach around 1,000 by the time the invasion started. Each crab was carefully assigned to a landing group, with 3 tanks working together to clear a single lane while additional tanks provided covering fire. On D-Day, crabs touched down on Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches. Their first challenge was the sea itself. Many landing craft faced rough waves, and some crabs drowned before they could reach the sand. Others landed in the wrong sectors and had to maneuver under enemy fire to reach their assigned lanes. But enough reached the beaches to make a difference. German defenders were stunned. Private Martin of the 726th Infantry Regiment later described seeing a Sherman fitted with a revolving drum, chains spinning at incredible speed, hammering the earth and raising clouds of dust. He watched as mines detonated, chains flew loose into the air, and the tank advanced without slowing. For soldiers who had spent months preparing defenses, this mechanical monster was terrifying. 1. Clearing the lanes. The crabs worked in precise formations. 3 tanks in echelon could clear a lane wide enough for armor and infantry to pass safely. Additional tanks stayed behind, ready to replace any disabled crab or provide fire support. Speed while flailing was slow, only about 1 to 2 miles per hour, but that was enough. Each chain carried a heavy steel ball, spinning at over 140 revolutions per minute, hitting mines up to 5 inches deep and detonating them before the tank could be harmed. Crabs also had disc cutters on the ends of the drum, slicing through barbed wire and other obstacles in their path. 2. Heroism under fire. Despite the protection of armor, the crews faced danger. Several crabs were destroyed while landing on the beach, trapped on craft ramps, or hit by enemy fire. One major stand dismounted from a burning vehicle and directed traffic on foot under machine gun fire, earning the Military Cross. Sergeant Lindseay drove the first crab to flail a path onto the mainland, then continued to support infantry attacks until his tank was destroyed by anti-tank fire, earning the Military Medal. These men risked their lives, not just to survive, but to clear paths for thousands of soldiers following behind. 3. Tactical limitations in action. While the crab was revolutionary, it had limits that shaped its tactics. The main gun could not fire while the flail was spinning, leaving the tank dependent on supporting vehicles for defense. Dust clouds raised by the chains reduced visibility, making navigation difficult. Broken chains could fly off dangerously, threatening infantry nearby. Speed was restricted to walking pace, meaning a single lane could take over 15 minutes to clear under fire. Despite these challenges, the Sherman Crab proved invaluable on Gold and Juno beaches. By the end of the morning, critical lanes had been cleared, and infantry and tanks could push inland much faster than would have been possible without these machines. 4. The impact on British success. The difference between the British and American landings was stark. On Omaha Beach, the United States forces lacked specialized vehicles like crabs, and over 2,000 casualties occurred within hours. At Gold, Juno, and Sword, crabs and other Hobart's funnies cleared obstacles, detonated mines, filled craters, and supported infantry with direct fire. Casualties were still significant, but manageable. By noon, the British and Canadian forces had established beachheads and were moving inland. The presence of crabs directly contributed to this success. Even after D-Day, crabs continued to support operations throughout Normandy. They cleared 14 gaps overnight during Operation Goodwood, allowing armored divisions to advance. Crews constantly replaced chains as they wore down from detonating hundreds of mines. Wooden mines were particularly tricky, as their design absorbed the flail impact, sometimes surviving the first hit. Yet even partial success meant lives saved, as engineers no longer had to crawl through deadly minefields by hand. The Crab's engine, the Chrysler Multibank, was critical. 30 cylinders arranged in 5 banks, producing 425 horsepower, powered both the tank and the flail. This meant the vehicle could move across sand, mud, and rough terrain while the chains hammered the ground ahead. If the tank's engine failed, the flail was useless, so engineers carefully maintained every component. Crews were trained to replace chains quickly, adjust flail height, and handle minor repairs while under fire. 1. The flail system. The flail drum carried 43 chains, each ending in a steel ball. Spinning at 142 revolutions per minute, the chains could detonate mines buried up to 5 inches deep. The drum was mounted on 2 massive steel arms and powered directly from the tank's engine through a shaft and reduction gearbox. This design eliminated the need for extra engines, which had plagued earlier versions. Flails could also cut through barbed wire and destroy wooden posts, making the Crab effective against a wide variety of obstacles simultaneously. 2. Contouring and terrain adaptation. Early flails had a fixed height, which meant that mines in depressions or uneven ground could survive. The Crab Mark II introduced a counterweighted jib that automatically adjusted the flail height based on the terrain. This simple but clever system used force balance to ensure the chain struck the ground at the correct angle, even in ditches or over small hills. The Crab could clear paths across beaches, open fields, and urban areas, giving Allied forces an unmatched advantage in mobility. 3. Cruise and combat. Operating a Crab required skill and courage. The tank carried 4 men, a driver, commander, gunner, and engineer-loader. While the flail was spinning, the main gun could not fire, so crews depended entirely on supporting armor and infantry. Dust and debris reduced visibility, and flying chains were dangerous. Yet, these men worked tirelessly, replacing chains that wore out after hitting dozens of mines, repairing damaged flails, and keeping their tanks moving under enemy fire. One memorable example came during the attack on La Hamel. Sergeant Lindseay flailed a path onto the mainland, then continued supporting infantry attacks until his tank was destroyed. He survived and was awarded the military medal. Across Normandy, similar acts of bravery became common. Major Stan, another officer, dismounted from a burning Crab and directed traffic under heavy fire, earning the Military Cross. These stories highlighted not only the technology but also the human courage behind it. 4. Combat beyond Normandy. After D-Day, Sherman Crabs continued to play a crucial role. During Operation Goodwood in July 1944, Crabs helped clear 14 gaps overnight, allowing tanks and infantry to advance quickly into German-held territory. The tanks were also used to breach minefields in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. By October, Lieutenant Sam Hall's troop engaged a German Panther while supporting the Coldstream Guards, showing that Crabs could operate under direct threat from enemy armor. Even when damaged or destroyed, Crabs had already completed their mission by opening lanes for other forces. 5. Mechanical superiority vs German alternatives. German attempts to create mechanical mine-clearing vehicles were largely failures. The VSKF Z617 Minenroy, a bizarre 3-wheeled contraption, sank into soft ground and was virtually useless. The Kreisroyer S, a massive 130-ton machine, never left the development facility. Even Soviet PT-34 rollers, simpler and more reliable than German vehicles, could not clear full lanes and often pushed mines into the soil rather than detonating them. Comparative studies showed flails could achieve 50 to 100% clearance depending on terrain and soil, while manual clearance remained most thorough, but lethal. The Crabs were part of specialized units within the 79th Armored Division. They were deployed alongside AVREs, Crocodile flame tanks, and standard Shermans to create a coordinated system of breaching, clearing, and fire support. Operations required careful planning, because even though the Crab could survive mine blasts, it was slow, loud, and vulnerable to anti-tank fire. Crews worked in small groups, replacing chains and repairing flails between engagements. 1. Clearing mines in France. In July 1944, during Operation Goodwood, Crabs cleared 14 gaps overnight, allowing British armor to advance quickly. Crews reported replacing worn chains after just 40 to 50 mines, a reminder of the intense stress placed on the vehicles. Wooden-cased mines, often used by Germans, were particularly difficult. Only about 25% detonated when struck, because the wood absorbed the impact. Even so, clearing partial paths was enough to save lives, allowing infantry and other tanks to move forward safely. 2. Pushing into Belgium and the Netherlands. As the Allies approached Belgium and the Netherlands, minefields became even more dense. Sherman Crabs worked alongside engineers to open lanes for armored divisions. At Overloon in October 1944, Lieutenant Sam Hall's troop supported the Coldstream Guards while under fire from German Panther tanks. Hall's Crab was eventually destroyed by a Panzerfaust, but by the time it was lost, its mission was complete, the lane was cleared, and troops advanced safely behind it. Despite losses, the Crab's presence drastically reduced human casualties compared to earlier campaigns where mines were cleared by hand. The British and Canadians reported that the lanes cleared by Crabs allowed their forces to advance with far fewer injuries than expected, even under heavy fire. 3. Losses and crew sacrifice. Operating a Sherman Crab was still dangerous. Crews faced enemy fire, debris, dust, and flying chains. Across Normandy and subsequent campaigns, the 22nd Dragoons lost 34 men killed, with 90 wounded, 16 missing, and 36 crabs destroyed. The 1st Lothians and Border Horse finished the war with 17 killed, 90 wounded, 16 missing, and 36 crabs destroyed. These numbers, while tragic, were far lower than the hundreds of engineers who might have died clearing minefields by hand. The crew's courage and dedication cannot be overstated. They were trained not only to drive and maintain their tanks, but also to operate under conditions where every second could mean death. Chains had to be replaced quickly, and tanks repaired while under threat from enemy fire. Each mission required skill, nerves of steel, and a deep understanding of the crab's mechanics. 4. German attempts and failures. German engineers recognized the need for mechanical mine clearing but failed to produce practical machines. The VSK FZ-617 Minenroy, a 3-wheeled prototype, sank into soft ground. The Kreisroyer S, a 130-ton behemoth, never left the development facility. Even the Soviet PT-34 mine roller could not clear full lanes and often pushed mines into soft soil instead of detonating them. By contrast, the Sherman Crab consistently cleared 50 to 100% of mines in its path, demonstrating the superiority of its design. 5. Post-war influence and legacy. The Sherman Crab's influence did not end in 1945. After the war, mechanical mine clearance became a permanent part of military engineering. German prisoners of war were used to remove over 1 million mines in Denmark by hand, a dangerous task that underscored the value of the crab's concept. Captain Du Toit received recognition for his invention in 1948, including £13,000 from the Royal Commission and shares among colleagues. By the end of the war, the Sherman Crab had proven itself beyond doubt. It wasn't the fastest tank, it couldn't fire while flailing, and it created massive clouds of dust, but it kept crews alive while clearing paths through minefields that would have killed hundreds of men. Across Normandy, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, these tanks transformed battlefield engineering, combining brute force, clever mechanics, and courage in ways no one had imagined. 1. The human cost and the lives saved. Crabs were far from invincible. Crews still faced danger from enemy fire, flying chains, and malfunctioning flails. In the Normandy campaign alone, the 22nd Dragoons lost 34 men killed, with 90 wounded, 16 missing, and 36 crabs destroyed. The Lothians and Border Horse suffered similar losses. These numbers were heavy, yet they pale in comparison to the losses that would have occurred if engineers had manually cleared every mine by hand, as was done in Denmark after the war. Hundreds of lives were saved because the crab could safely detonate mines while its crew stayed inside the armor. 2. Engineering legacy. The Sherman Crab's flail system set a standard for modern mine-clearing vehicles. Its direct-drive flail, automatic height adjustment, and robust chain mechanism proved so effective that every mechanical mine-clearing vehicle since has been influenced by it. Today, armies deploy remote-controlled flails, armored mine-clearing vehicles, and systems designed for modern mine belts, all tracing their heritage back to the crab's simple, brutally effective concept. 3. Surviving crabs and museums. Several Sherman crabs survive today, serving as reminders of innovation and courage. They can be seen in museums across the world: the Tank Museum in Bovington, the Overloon War Museum in the Netherlands, and military collections in Israel, Canada, India, and Pakistan. Many still carry battle damage, telling silent stories of D-Day, the advance through France, and the push into Germany. Visitors can witness the incredible chains, armored hulls, and flail drums, imagining how terrifying these machines were to the defenders who faced them. 4. Stories of bravery and heroism. Beyond the technology, the Sherman Crab reminds us of human bravery. Soldiers like Sergeant Lindseay and Major Stan risked their lives to ensure paths were cleared for thousands of troops. Crews replaced chains under fire, repaired tanks while dust and debris blinded them, and worked tirelessly to keep the crab moving through minefields and enemy obstacles. Their courage, combined with engineering genius, turned a strange, insane idea into a battlefield lifesaver. 5. Lessons learned. The story of the Sherman Crab teaches that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. Instead of detecting every mine or trying to finesse the enemy defenses, the British engineers realized that brute force, carefully applied, could solve a deadly problem. This lesson is as relevant today as it was in 1944. When faced with seemingly impossible obstacles, creativity, courage, and bold engineering can overcome even the deadliest threats.